Have you ever really given consideration as to why? And that's why you want that next snare drum. It's something that genuinely I have thought about a lot over the years, and I find myself coming back to the subject quite regularly in terms of just sort of thinking, well, what is it about that particular drum that I've sort of noticed that I really, why would I really want it? And I came to the conclusion quite a while ago that there are really sort of three main reasons as to why we might buy snare drums. Now, the first one is collectability. And I genuinely think I can honestly say that certainly in the last 15 years, but I think it's generally anyway, I've never bought a snare drum because it was collectible. I've got snare drums that are collectible, and I've got snare drums that came collectible after I bought them, but I've never actually specifically gone out my way to say, well, that's a collectible drum and I want it. Now, I think most of my Craviottos are probably fairly collectible, just by virtue of the fact that I've got a whole load of the AK Craviottos, particularly the nickel over brass diamond series, which I just got in 2008 because I liked them. I got the 5.5 first, and then realised that I liked it, and I was in a position to get the 6.5, so I got the 6.5 as well. And then I liked those two so much that I got 2 of the next lot, and 2 of the next lot, and then I got 1 of the 2 subsequent runs after that. But the fact that they became collectible later, particularly the nickel over brass ones, are really quite collectible and really quite silly money as well, if you think about it. It was by virtue of what they became. It wasn't that I had some great foresight or anything, and they just became collectible. And I think with some of the other drums, some of the other Craviottos that I have, they're one-offs or they're limited runs, or some of them even technically don't exist. But I never actually specifically bought anything thinking, this will be a great collectible in the future or a great collectible now. So there's that aspect, which is kind of the fun one, but it can also land you in a lot of trouble if you set your mind to something and say, well, you know what, I really do want that Mastercraft Bell Bronze that Tama made in the 1980s. So, I'm going to go and sort of find that. And I think in terms of actually being a collector of drums, and if you're an active and aggressive collector and you decide that you really must have one of those drums or one of whatever it is, I know a lot of people kind of like enjoy the thrill of searching one out and finding one, and that's cool. It's not something I've ever done, but there is certainly that aspect to collecting anything really, but collecting drums in this instance. Second aspect that I've always thought about is sound, and that's kind of the obvious one really, but I don't think it's the primary thing that really sets us off down a certain path, and I'll come to that in a minute. But the second one, sound. So, I have bought drums, not particularly recently, but I know a couple of times in about 1995, I was actually seeking a certain sound. I was listening to a lot of Pearl Jam at the time, and I know Dave Abruzzese was I think he used the 12x7 Brady on some of the stuff that he played on their second album. I never really got into the third album. Obviously, Dave Cruzen played on the first album, and after they kicked him out of the band, I never had anything more to do with them. But there were certain songs on the second album that I really liked the snare sound on, and I read somewhere that he was using the 12x7, and I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford a Brady. I think even now there's no way I'm going to be able to afford a Brady. But, well, okay, oddly enough, I do have a 12x7 Brady, but not a block one. Okay, I don't have one of the Wandu or Jarrah blocks, or, you know, my one's just a ply one. But it does still say Brady on it, so, you know. But, and I was also listening to a lot of Green Day's Dookie, which came out in '95 as well. And, you know, rightly or wrongly, that was the inspiration for me getting the Violet Shade Star Classic 14x5.5, which is a maple drum, and obviously matches the that one there. But you know, I still love that drum, and it does still give me a certain sound. But I specifically bought that drum with that kind of sound in mind, and whether it whether it was near enough to it, I don't know. But you know, the third one, and I think this is the one that actually is mostly the reason why we end up buying more snare drums, and that's look. Or visual connection. I think visual connection is probably a better description. You visually connect with something, and then you just kind of, it draws you in, and then you decide, you know, and then sound maybe becomes a factor. But I think for a lot of the drums that I've bought, you know, I think at this point in time, it's probably safe to say I can buy a snare drum, and you know, unheard. Because I've got a general idea of what it is I'm getting. You know, you don't play with like this many drums and review drums for 18 years without at least picking up one or two things about, you know, what it is you're trying to achieve. So I think I can reasonably do that these days. And as I said, you know, most of these drums I bought second hand. So or a good portion of them I bought second hand. So. You know, they haven't been bought through shops or anything, and it's just a matter of sort of, you know, picking them up and knowing, or seeing them, and knowing what it is you're kind of going for. But I think really, for certainly people of my age, when, oh God, I've turned into one of those people, haven't I? But anyway, certainly, the people of my age, I'm going to embrace the old, people of my age used to really only have catalogues. So we're talking people that grew up in the sort of any time really before the 80s. You know, and Charlie Smith, mate, that was a time that was like way before you were born, when we only had paper things. So, but I used to look at catalogues. And you know, if I was lucky to see a bit of Top of the Pops or another TV show that had music videos on it, you know, I'd see it on there. But I used to collect catalogues, and I've still got a load of like catalogues. I've got stuff from the 80s and the 90s, you know. And for people of my generation and my era, that was the thing. You see something in a catalogue, and you just visually connect with it, and you'd like, oh man, if I had the money, I'd really like that. And you know, and I think for me, I mean, obviously life is different now. We still have catalogues, but they're kind of like PDF files more than they're necessarily paper. You've obviously got YouTube, you've got Instagram, you've got all sorts of social media, you've got all sorts of media in general where you can sort of still get that visual connection, but it's one of those things you're more able to basically see and hear things instantaneously now, whereas, you know, people like me, we just had a flat piece of paper to look at. But a lot of this comes from that, and that's looking at catalogues when I was younger and when I was a kid and growing up and thinking, ah man, if I ever had the money. And I know that was the case with the 14x5.5 timeless timber, which I have, which oddly enough, I mean, the first one of those I saw about 20 years ago, it was the DW version. Yeah, okay, it was still a Craviotto, but it was the DW version of that drum, and I saw it in a glass case in my local store, and it was priced about £2,000. And I thought, man, if I ever had the money, you know. And I was lucky enough in 2006 to mug a few old ladies, and I got some. No, I didn't. I took a loan. I actually took a loan, and I bought the timeless timber, and the one I've got, and I have done a video. I've done at least one video on it, but it probably needs updating a lot. But I was lucky enough to basically get a Craviotto. I got a Craviotto 1 of 1 actually. I got one of the last shells that Johnny had of that timeless timber. And I mean, I cherish that drum, but that's a perfect example of you know, seeing something and then just sort of mentally locking it away and thinking, if I ever had the money, and you know, in fact the drum nearest to the camera, which is slightly out of, well, it's completely out of view actually because it's behind the lens, is the Premier Signia snare drum that I have in cherry wood. Again, I saw that in a magazine just after they came out, and it was something about just the logo on the bass drum head, because if you're familiar with the Signia line, when they came out they didn't have Premier on it, it actually said Signia. And I would still love, if I ever had the money in the space, to get a Signia kit in cherry wood, and failing that, I've always been quite partial to the white one as well, but with the Signia logo front bass drum head. That, I mean, that to me would be that would still be one of my all-time kind of bucket list sort of kits, I think, really. But that's you know, it's because it's a nostalgia thing. Like I say, I mean, it's a lot easier these days. I mean, there are a lot of drum shops around. When I was a teenager, there are a lot of drum shops in London, and my local drum shop didn't come into being until I think it was 1993. By which time I was 21. And I was going. I'd been going up into central London and visiting the West End and Tin Pan Alley and all the surrounding area. From the time I was about 14, I used to go up to London with all my mates on the train, and we just trawl around all the drum shops and look at the guitars and the drums, and still a lot of that nostalgia, even now, came from those little trips. But mainly it was looking at catalogues, and again, I mean, the Paiste 2002, which is here, which no, that's still out of shot as well. That again, that came from seeing it in a magazine and making a visual connection with it and thinking, oh man, I'd love one of those, and I didn't even know why. I just loved the look of it, and I just really wanted one. And still to this day, I'm pretty sure that is the only one I've ever seen in person. You know, but it's another example. And I mean, this room is like filled with that stuff. Really, I mean, again, like the violet shade kit. I mean, the fact that, okay, I already had the snare drum, but I always loved the look of that because I saw an advert with Kenny Aronoff, and there was another one with Joel Rosenblatt. They were playing a kit, a Star Classic kit in that finish. And then probably one of the absolute classic examples of that is the Cherry Rose Grand Star. I saw that, as I said on the video that I did for that, but I fell in love with the concept of those drums through two mediums. It was seeing it in the catalogue, and I'm absolutely sure I've still got the Grand Star and the Art Star catalogues from about '87. But I also saw Gary Wallace and Mark Price playing those kits on the Tube with Nick Kershaw. Now the Tube is, or rather was, a great English music show that used to go out, I think it was like every Friday night, and you know, it was live music, it was live bands, and there's some great stuff on YouTube now, and if you do want to check out the vibe of that particular show, if you look up, and it's something else I've been looking at a lot recently, is some level 42 stuff from about 84, 85, 86. There's a whole bunch of tunes on there on the Level 42 YouTube page actually. And I've listened to that stuff a bunch of times because it's got Phil Gould playing on it. He's playing on a couple of different. I think they're both Superstar kits, Thomas Superstar kits. But that'll give you the vibe, or kind of give you the vibe of that particular show. It was absolutely fantastic, and you know you wouldn't get like a band playing for 6 minutes on live TV now, but then absolutely you did. But that's how I used to see things. I used to see things like that and go, oh man, that's fantastic, isn't it? But the same thing really, you know, it's the same thing with Club Customs. I'm a big fan of Steve Jordan. I was absolute arse for missing these things when they came out. But, you know, I managed to pick up a kit and that was cool. Same with the Janistas. I kind of saw those. Rod Morgenstein was, or Morgenstein, I never know how you pronounce his name. There was an advert with him, which I saw in Modern Drummer, and probably in Rhythm as well. And I think it was along the lines of, I used to be indecisive, and now I'm not just sure. And then he was sitting there with a Signia kit on one side and a Janista kit on the other. And that was kind of like a big... that was kind of like a big inviting sort of picture for me in terms of like, oh wow, okay, I'm not sure I can afford a Signia, but I can get a Janista because they were both high-end kits. Signia's maple, Janista's birch, and the birch was just slightly cheaper, and I went for that one. But you know, there are so many kits in here that I kind of just, you know, kits and you know, really sort of snare drums as well. You know, that I saw on, you know, in magazines or on the TV, and in fact, actually, I'm looking at it, the Custom Z. And in fact, I will even get that one down. So this one, now I know I've done a video on this, and I know I talked at length about these drums, you know, but this is another absolutely perfect example of seeing a set of drums on a page in a magazine, well, in an advert actually, and thinking, oh man, I love those drums. And I'll put the advert on the screen so you'll see it, because I managed to find it. But there's something about these drums, and the fact that these were phenomenally expensive when they came out at the end of the 80s. I mean, these were like, I think they were like $4,000 for like a 5-piece, and that was like $4,000 in the end of the 80s. I mean, I can't remember how much I worked that out to. I think I did actually sit and, you know, put it in a calculator and work it out, and it's a phenomenal amount of money. Probably no reason at all as to why they didn't really sell that much, but hey. But something else that, again, you know, it's on that visual connection side. Now, I've reviewed a lot of Gretsch drums, and I haven't done this video, this drum yet, but this is another perfect example of sort of wanting something representative of Gretsch, and I know, I mean, as I say, I haven't actually done this drum yet. I've had this for a couple of months, but you know, I've just not got around to doing it yet. But I've reviewed a lot of Gretsch drums over the years from MikeDelbear.com, and it's like, you know, some of the Catalinas right up to the Broadcasters and stuff, and the Renowns, and there's just something for me about a Gretsch drum, whether it be a kit or a snare drum, in a natural, like, blonde wood finish, or even actually in a darker sort of stain. But there's something about that with the 302 hoops and the grey insides. There's just something about it that sort of screams vibe to me. And when I get that drum down and play it, it's just got a certain, it just puts me in a certain mindset, and it's got a certain sound to it as well that just kind of, it just puts me into a different mind space or headspace, and you know, there's just something about it. But it's that visual thing. It's the visual thing that I connect with the look of a drum. And then the sound is the next thing, and it kind of just one draws you in, and then the other one completely captures you. And I'm pretty sure that that's the same for most of us, because I think you can become. I think I've become a collector. I still don't really see it as that as such. I just see an idiot with too much disposable income and not enough brains. But it is what it is. But the thing is, I became a sort of collector of drums, not because I set out to be a collector of drums. I just have this thing where I just visually associate and visually sort of make up my mind that I kind of really want to try a certain drum when I see it, and it's just it's something I just can't get away from. And like I said, I'm pretty sure most of us are the same in that. I think probably if I was going to break it down in terms of sort of any sort of percentage, I mean the collectability sort of, or going after something as a collector. As I said, I don't feel that I'm a collector in that particular sort of mindset. I don't sort of collect Grand Stars in Cherry Rose. And I know there are people that do that. But I'm not a collector of Grand Stars in Cherry Rose, and I make up my mind and go, you know what, I have to have something in every size that's in the catalogue. And you get people that do that, and that to me is a collector. And that to me is, if I really need an 8-inch tom. You've made up your mind to sort of go down that route, and because you are a collector of that line, you want to collect everything in that line, and that's like active collecting to me. I mean, I guess if you break it down, you have like active collecting and passive collecting. I would very much be the passive side of things. I think like I said, I don't specifically go after anything that is collectible. I don't really have a collection in that sense, but it's definitely the visual connection which I think grabs most of us. And I think if I broke it down to some sort of percentage, I'd probably be next to nothing on the sort of active collector scale, but I would probably be about 90% on the visual connection thing and 10% for this going after a specific sound, because I know I haven't done that in a long time. I think arguably you could say I've got most bases pretty much well sewn up at this point. Through not really intention as such, but it just is what it is. But I think, I mean, let me know what you think. I'm always fascinated to hear from other people, and I'm always fascinated to hear what other people think. And as I said, I'm pretty sure that most of us buy because of some sort of visual connection. Obviously, I mean, if you've got the newer stuff, it just depends really, doesn't it? I know people of my age, we looked at stuff in catalogues and then we saw it, and later on, as you get older, you get your means, you get a job, you get some money, you're able to buy stuff. But that's kind of my take on it. As I said, it kind of wasn't deliberate, but let me know what you think. I'm fascinated to know. Thanks for watching. See you again.